So I just poured enough oil in there to kind of just coat the bottom a little bit, and we're going to let that heat up so when we put the meat in there, it browns right up so it's not all pink when we're done cooking it. So now we're going to add our black ground pepper. I just use this little guy, little shaker crusher guy, and I'm going to crush it in here and let that heat up and really get the flavors going. So that's how much pepper I put in. We like it pretty hot, so I like to put in lots of big chunks. If you find that your pepper absorbs too much of your oil, go ahead and just add a little bit more so you can make sure you have a good base for your meat. Okay, so here's my trick for putting the tinfoil onto the lid, because you want to put a tinfoil on there so it doesn't, you don't have to worry about cleaning it later and it won't get all rusty. You don't have to worry about dealing with any of that around those nooks and crannies in there. So all I do is I take my tinfoil, it's about 1.5 feet long, I suppose, and I just lay it down on top of the pot. Doesn't matter which side is sticking up, shiny or not shiny. And then you just pick up your lid and you set it on there. You kind of find the hole and you wiggle it on there. And then you wrap all of these around. And once you have it all wrapped around, you just take it off and you have a perfectly crimped lid and it's ready to use. You just set it aside. Okay, so this is the stew meat. I buy the stew meat at Target, and I buy it because it's already ready to go, all chopped up. And it's usually around a pound, pound and a half. It just depends on how they have it all separated. And I find it really well, or it's really good. There isn't a bunch of, fat in there, because I don't like too much fat. I try to keep this as lean as possible, minus the oil, of course, but you got to have a little bit of something. So it just comes like this. I haven't really had any problems with any cartilage pieces or anything like that, and they separate really well when you put them in the pan. And I'm going to do that right now. We're just going to put them right in. And you can hear that sizzle, and that's what you want to hear. I'm going to take my tongs and just separate them. Alright, and we're just going to let that cook a little longer. I don't cook them all the way through, just enough to brown the outside, like I said, so it's not pink when you're trying to eat it later. Because if you just boil beef, sometimes it stays kind of pink, and I don't really care for that. So what I do is I have to do 1 pound at a time, because my pot isn't that large, but that's okay. Because then in the bottom it accumulates all the beef juices, and it just gets stronger and stronger, and it makes me really happy for that flavor for when I do my onion. Because I like to caramelize my onion a bit in the beef juice before I add it all in together. So I'll let that cook just a little bit longer. Okay, so that's all the juice that's left over from the first batch of meat. As you can see, there's quite a bit. So all we're going to do is to add the meat right into that and brown it the exact same way. So here's the onion I'm going to put in. I just use a white onion like I showed earlier. And I just do a very rough chop because I like big pieces, because I like to be able to pick them out if I want to. Or I can eat them if I want to also. I used to quarter it so I could definitely pick them out. But as I've gotten older, I've decided that I don't mind onions, especially when they're super soft and they're so mushy it doesn't bother you anyway. Because I don't really care for the crunch of an onion. But this is how I'm going to put them in, and I will caramelize them slightly, just to soften them just a touch so they stir up a little easier. Okay, so I have slid the onions into the stew meat juice, and I just slightly break it up. It's not that big of a concern because it will break up as you let it cook. And now I'm just going to put the lid on it and let it simmer for a while. Okay, so here are the onions. They were sticking to the pan, so I had to put a little bit of stock in there. No big deal. You scrape up all the good bits on the bottom and let them simmer for a while, and pretty soon the meat will be ready to go in. Okay, so before I put the meat in, I'm going ahead and putting in my packet of Lipton Onion Soup Mix. I know this might sound like cheating, but it's so good. You really good. If you've never tried it, try it. You're just going to stir this around, and I'm actually going to let this cook in the juice for a little while, just to kind of bloom the flavors, you could say. I don't know. Just trying to soften up those little guys, too, and get everything moist and ready to go. Now I'm going to put the meat in. And like I said, it's not all the way cooked, it's just a little brown, so it's not so gross later. I'm just going to dump all of that in. And that was all 2 pounds of it. I'm just going to stir that around a bit. And then I'm going to turn this down, because while this is just hanging out, I am actually cutting up my carrots, and I'll show you here in a little bit what I'm doing. So I'm going to try to get my tongs to work. I'm going to turn this down to low. As you can see right now, it's between medium and high. I just do that to get everything going. So I'm going to turn it to low, and we're going to turn it back up later. And then I'm going to put the lid back on, and you have to use a pot holder because it is very, very hot. I'm just going to go ahead and put that little guy back on there, just like that. So over here, what I've got going on is my carrots. I kind of have this bowl that I fill up, and I know that if this bowl is full, it's not going to fit in there. Or if it's over full, it's not going to fit in there, because this is roughly the same size as that inside, roughly. So I put the first pound of carrots in. This is 1 pound of carrots. I just cut them into kind of bite-sized pieces. They might look slightly large, but they do shrink and soften a little bit. So, and you don't want to make them too small or else they get squishy and gross. So I just wanted to show you how I cut these real quick. I just cut them, basically the whole potato in half, and then I cut it in half again. And then I cut these little strips. They're about, I would say, 1/2 inch, maybe to 3/4. Just depends on how big you like your sizes to be. And I'm just going to put them back, for dish's sake, in this beef bowl, because it's all going to be cooked anyway. I'm not really worried about contamination or anything like that. So here is the 2 pounds of carrots. It looks like a lot, but my family loves carrots. And I do not put anything green in my stew. I don't like green things in my stew, but that's just personal preference, and that's what my family likes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off my lid and see how good that looks. Oh yeah. Alright, so we're going to put all of the carrots in there, just like this. Make sure it's empty. You got a little guy in the bottom there you can come with. Okay, and then I'm going to put all of the stock in. But I'm not going to put the potatoes in yet because they cook a lot faster than the carrots do. If you didn't know, I'm not professional here, but it's just something I've noticed. Had a few mushy stews before. So we're just going to put that in, stir it around, see how it's sitting. And I just put enough in to kind of cover it, kind of not. If it's just chilling, it's fine. The carrots will release some juice. And the beef and the onions, you know, they all still release juices. So it'll eventually cover up. I'm not too worried about it. And then I'm going to turn that back up to medium. Or maybe we'll say in between that. Because once I put the lid on it, it's going to kind of simmer and do its thing. And it will probably start to boil sooner than I want it to. So I'm going to let that go for maybe 15-20 minutes, and I'll check it and see how the carrots are doing. And depending on how the carrots are doing, I'll go ahead and add the potatoes, because they really don't take any longer than just making mashed potatoes, which is maybe 15 minutes. So you got to really be mindful of that when you're going to put them in here. Like I said, I've had a couple mushy stews before, and it was not good. Alright, so this has been boiling for, I would say, 10 or 15 minutes. I did bump up the heat just a little bit to more towards medium, just because it wasn't going quite as fast as I wanted to, and my husband will be home from the gym soon, and I want to make sure this is ready for when he comes home. I'm just going to stir it up and see what's happening here. I never worry about the meat being done, because with all the boiling, of course, I know it's going to be done. I've heat tested it before and made sure that it was good. So I'm just going to see how these carrots squish. They're still pretty firm. You obviously don't want them to squish all the way, so then you know they're overdone. See, he's ready, but he's a thinner one, so I would say it's time to put in the potatoes, just because I was squeezing it pretty hard. And I like softer carrots, my husband likes harder carrots, but who's making it? Me, so we get softer carrots. So I'm going to dump in all of these potatoes. I'm just going to stir them up. Okay, so I've opened my can of broth. Be careful not to spill it. And I always dump it in for almost the whole thing, but not quite all the way, depending on how your potatoes are sitting. Because like I said, your potatoes are going to let off a lot of juice. And I've had that happen in the past. It's all trial and error. I've been making this for several years now. So it takes, you know, just a couple times to figure out what you're doing. So I would say that's about good enough. I'm not, like I said, I'm not worried that they're covered, because the potatoes will let off some juice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the lid back on it, and we're going to make our thickening agent. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what I'm talking about. This is an actual tablespoon size. I'm measuring tablespoon, like here. And then this is my tablespoon that I use off of my table set, I guess. It's just the bigger spoon, the soup spoon, whatever you want to say. So I'm just going to take a heaping one of these guys. And when I say heaping, I mean heaping, but like that. It's pretty large. It's going right in the cup. Just like that. And sorry, it's a white cup. That's all I have. I don't have any darker cups. All right, so then what I do is I just kind of push it in. Bring it over. You can get 3 or 4 or 5 of these guys, whatever it takes. Don't worry about it right now. It's going to get all gross for a second. Yes, I slap on my oven. It's fine. And you're just going to stir this up. And it looks really sick and weird, and it sounds really gross. But it will get better. And you can feel the chunks in the bottom. And unfortunately, this is a square glass, which is fine. I'm used to it. It's not a big deal. You just got to make sure you get all the little guys off the bottom. Make sure they're all incorporated. And like I said, if you feel like it's not smooth enough, this is very smooth. I did pretty well the first round. Yay me. But if it needed more, I would add more if it was chunky in any way. So then I just take my spoon, kind of rinse it off. I want all the starch. I don't want to lose any of it. And then we're going to just dump it in. Just like that. And then I stir it up. And what I kind of look for is like a color, I guess. I'm looking for, I would say, what a coffee looks like with kind of a bunch of creamer in it. And I can see that that is not enough. I'll definitely need at least one more of those. So I'm just going to go ahead and dip in here. I've never had a problem with anything getting clumped up in there for my spoons, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm just going to add some more. And I'll just add 2 this time to show you what it would look like if you did not add enough. So here, we only have 2 in there, and you can see what happens to it. And this stuff is like magic if you've never used it. A lot goes into a little bit of liquid. It's really amazing. So right now, you can see it's pretty gloppy. It has big chunks in it. So that's what it looks like when you do not have enough. And I can feel on the bottom that there's quite a bit stuck. So we're just going to add some more. And if you put enough in there, it will all incorporate. Don't be afraid. It's kind of like when you make macaroni and cheese and you don't think it's ever going to mix, and then finally, all of a sudden, the noodles are all coated. So it's kind of the same biz. Just clean off the spoon. And dump that right in. And mix it up. Like I said, do not over thicken this because it will be a hassle the next day. Alright, I think that'll work. And then I'm just going to put the lid back on it at the same heat. I might turn it down just a touch depending on how fast I want the potatoes to cook. I think I might just do that. We'll turn that down just a little bit. And then as soon as the potatoes are done, it is done. Alright, I just wanted to show you what it looks like after it's thickened some. As you can see, it's definitely thicker. The bubbles are a lot more dense looking. And this is almost ready. I could probably pull it now or turn it off the heat anyway. See, the potatoes are nice and squishy. And that's how I like them, because I don't necessarily want my potato to taste like potato. I know that sounds ridiculous. I really like my potato to taste like beef. I just want it all to be incorporated and really nicely done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this all the way to low. Maybe even off, probably off, because the cast iron skillet really holds a lot of heat, and this lid being on is going to hold a lot of heat too. So all I'm going to do is let that cool down, and we'll be ready to eat.